You can import 3D objects in FBX or OBJ format into SMODE compositions. All you need to do is add them in a media directory as shown here, and search for the 3D format, in this case an FBX, then drag and drop it into your layers. There are two possibilities here. Either you try to retrieve the sub-objects that make up your object in FBX format, in which case you import it as a group, or consider the object to be a single object and import it as a reference geometry. In this case, I'm going to import it as a group. Now my 3D object is imported. One thing you'll need to pay attention to each time is the anchor point of your 3D object, its scale, and its position within SMODE's 3D space. You'll be able to navigate between the 2D and 3D space of the SMODE composition. To do so, use this icon. Here, for example, you're switching to the 3D view, giving you access to the 3D space of the SMODE composition. I can visualize all the 3D layers. To navigate in the 3D space, I hold down the Alt key, then left-click and move the mouse. Use the scroll wheel to move forward, backward and sideways. My 3D object normally contains textures. As I can see here, I have a texture folder. But as in many cases, my 3D object didn't import the textures. If I unfold the group that was created, I see that here I have two sub-objects. One is called aux, the other one is called main, and then I have a third object, material bank, which is here. If I unfold it, I see that I've got objects that actually represent PBR textures. They are associated with each of my sub-objects. For example, this sub-object, main, if I look at its renderer options, how it is displayed, I see that it uses JSF main matte. And when I click on the edit button, I see that JSF main matte is a reference to this texture. So the trick is simply to find the corresponding images and replace them in the PBA passes. To do this, for example, I'm going to take an image that corresponds to the albedo of main matte. In this case, it's probably mainmatte_diffuse.png. I take this image, hold down Alt and then drop it into the albedo layer. And I will do the same for all the other layers. Metal within metallic, normal within normal, and roughness within roughness. And now I will do the same for the second object, aux, this one. So here I see that I've got a diffuse that I'm gonna put in the albedo, the metal in the metallic, the normal in the normal, and the roughness in the roughness. Some 3D objects can be animated. This one is animated. If I want to recover the animation of my FBX, I'll have to import it as a group. However, not all animation will work on SMODE. Only those based on the animation of the orientation, position, scale, in short, all translation animations. Also, if your animations are based on bones, SMODE isn't yet able to integrate them. So if I want to recover my animation, I have to import the object as a group. Then you have to pay attention to what has been imported into the group. First, I go back in 3D view and select my group. If I unfold the group, I see that several objects have been imported. Here, for example, there is a camera that has been imported, because there is a camera by default in my group object. But in this case, I don't need it, so I delete it. This object is a null object. I won't need it either, so I delete it. So here I can see that my 3D object has been imported correctly, since I can see the sub-objects and the subgroups. However, I can't see it in the viewport. That's because there are scaling issues between the different 3D softwares. So I'm gonna have to scale up my group or move its anchor point until I find my object. Here it is. You see that in addition to the sub-object and the material bank that we saw earlier, a timeline has been created which contains the animation. So all I have to do is play the timeline to see my animation. If it's a loop, I select the timeline and then check the looping option in its parameters. This way, I click once on the play button and the animation loops by itself. Here as well, textures were not imported properly. In such cases, I rely on the material bank to reassign the images to the correct PBR passes. That's it, the textures are imported, and I can now visualize the results in the 2D view.